Good evening, good morning, depending on where you are joining. This is 7 p.m. in Poland, Central Eastern European time, and it's yet another episode of Disruption Talks. So, what is our focus today? It's going to be location. So, we know how important it is location when it comes to sharing it with your friends, location when it comes to ordering food, and many other everyday applications. But also, when you think of it, there are many situations in which actually location is a low-hanging fruit that no one has picked up yet. Imagine if you went to the pharmacy and instead of standing in queues for ages, just like you do today, imagine if the pharmacy knew when you are coming. You would buy online and pick up in store. So today, joining us is Nick Patrick from Radar.io, the CEO and co-founder himself, and he will tell us in short and in length why it makes sense in some industries and why some industries haven't caught up yet. So welcome, Nick. Great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to be here.
It's a pleasure. So we usually run it with like a triangular prism: the guest, the company, the industry. So I would love to begin with a little introduction from yourself for our audience.
Sure. So my name is Nick Patrick. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Radar. I am a product guy by trade, so sort of started as a product manager working in the tech space and had the experience building digital products and services. And location was actually a problem that I relatively early in my career got some exposure to. Was working at Foursquare, one of the early location-based social apps. Then went to Handy, which is an on-demand services platform where we wanted to build this Uber-style, track your service providers, see them on a map. And really saw the potential of building location-based experiences, but also the challenges related to it. And that was what ultimately led me to co-found Radar.
Okay. And if you could tell me, what is the personal why of what gets you up every day in the morning? What is the key driver of Nick, not of Radar specifically, but of Nick?
Yeah, it's a great question. Sometimes it changes day to day or week to week, but I think, in general, love to build things, whether that's, a digital product or something else. And, generally just enjoy creating and being creative. So one of the things that's so exciting for me about Radar is obviously we're empowering other folks to build great experiences on top of our platform, but also get the chance to build a platform and a service with a team of 30 really incredible people to solve a problem that I had faced previously as a builder in previous roles in my career.
Okay, so seems like I got a stupid question. The experience of working at Foursquare, definitely inspirational towards whatever is going on at Radar.io, right? Like, perhaps it's a stupid question, or perhaps I'm right and there was a division, or was that's directly influential and you transitioned from Foursquare knowing that Radar.io is the thing to happen next for you?
Yeah, it was, I would say, definitely influenced my thinking about the opportunities in the space and, how exciting the space is. Foursquare is obviously very early in the location-based services space. I wasn't there for a super long time, but, kind of got exposure both to, the consumer experiences you can build with location, whether that's helping people find interesting things nearby or, communicating with your friends based on location, all the way to how, some of the leading brands were taking advantage of location or could take advantage of location, whether that's for an ad campaign or some operational experience as well. What ultimately I think seeded the initial idea for Radar was my experience that I had after Foursquare at Handy, where we wanted to solve an operational use case with location. This was during the sort of Uber for X craze where we were building an Uber for cleaning and handyman services, and we wanted to build that operational, Uber style track your service provider on a map. So both definitely influenced my thinking. My co-founder Kobe spent some time at a company called mParticle, which was a pretty early customer data platform, and had some keen insights on how location data could be sent to other tools and used within this product and growth stack ecosystem. And we kind of combined all of those things into Radar. And I think it's been part of our progression as a platform and a product. We started with more sort of consumer use cases, and over time we've started to see more folks interested in operational use cases, whether it's curbside pickup or delivery tracking or arrival detection or whatever. And we've also started to see, which is kind of cool, some consumer apps starting to cross over and care about operational use cases, right? I think historically operational use cases related to location were, siloed to, fleet tracking or workforce management or asset tracking, things like that. But, now we see retailers and QSRs investing in operational use cases related to location as well, which is really cool and sort of a fun crossover point for us as a business.
You mentioned QSRs. Would you be so kind to expand that abbreviation for our audience?
Yes, QSR stands for quick service restaurant. And I think in general, think fast food restaurants all the way up to kind of casual dining. And the use cases there are potentially pretty similar to retail in terms of you order ahead. Maybe for a retailer, you're ordering a TV or a T-shirt or something and going to pick that up. Whereas for QSRs, for restaurants, you might be ordering a meal ahead. And you're on your way to the restaurant. Where are you? How far away are you? When should the in-store staff start prepping the order, pulling your order together? And then also, what's your experience when you arrive at the restaurant? Pull into the parking lot, pull into the drive-through, enter the store, whatever. So we think about all these things.
So the holy grail is the ideal communication between I want a cup of coffee. The moment I walk through the door, someone knows that cup of coffee should be in somebody's hand, aimed my way, right? And I want to frame it a little bit on my side, because actually I think we're going to have a better conversation if I share this with you. Back when I was 19, me and my co-founder at Lancaster University in the UK, we came up with something that was also strictly location-based. And we spoke with companies like, I'm not going to name names, but the biggest supermarkets in the UK or hotel chains, because it was 2013. So things like geofencing, rich notifications, push, all of that was sort of beginning to not exist, but exist in the understanding of what is the capability, what's the potential of such a use case. And we had $90,000 total, 18 and 19 years each of us. So of course, the companies loved the idea that you would have the loyalty app. They would know where you spend most time in the store. There was an idea for application of beacons. But at the end of the day, they said, listen, I mean, you're 18, 19, you got $90,000 to back you up. Nobody's going to sign that and take the risk on their corporate job. So we actually pivoted to SMEs and we created an app. We worked with our universities to make sure that you as a student would get location-based, most likely, and other factors too, recommendations. And on the other side, it would have the businesses who weren't digitized at all, because of course, Starbucks is going to buy an app and they're going to have the technological people to handle it. But a pub, a beauty salon, not necessarily. So I just wanted to share this so you get that I also come from not an exact background like you, but I get it a little at least. So
yeah, that's awesome. And I think, obviously a lot has changed since 2013 as well, right? And I think there are new use cases emerging. This is becoming increasingly seen as a need to have instead of a nice to have, and the technology and privacy landscape are changing as well. And so that being said, I still think we're in the super early innings, and happy to expand on any of that.
Okay. I mean, I'd hate to sort of ruin the course of the conversation, but if you could at least just draw a teaser to which we come back later. Why do you think that we are just at the beginnings? Even though we just spoke about the beginnings of the beginnings in 2013, you say we're at the beginnings in 2021. What's the horizon for not being in the beginning?
Yeah, I think COVID accelerated a lot, and we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel with COVID. But customers really value speed and convenience. I think that's more true than ever. They value safety, and location as an operational tool is a means to deliver convenient, safe digital experiences. So I think that's part of it. I think that the technology has advanced a lot, but still has a ways to go. Obviously, there are a lot of location services capabilities built into iOS and Android, but still really challenging to build with, and that's a gap that we're trying to solve as a platform. And so we can talk maybe later in the conversation about how we see this play out playing out over the next couple of years. But there are certain industries where location is a core competency, and I think those folks are further ahead. The Ubers or the Yelps of the world. Location was built into the V1. They still have problems they need to solve with location. But a lot of apps aren't taking advantage yet. And I think there's this perfect storm of customer demand, technological capabilities. We at Radar are trying to help solve some of that. And also just sort of education and ideas and inspiration about what's possible with location is all accelerating. And we're still just getting started.
which is a spectacular segue, speaking of education, of what is possible, because the next things that we should discuss is we should ground this conversation for everybody listening, and of course myself as well. I want to learn from you. Let's speak about the what and then the how. So if you could give us a basic rundown of what are like the pillars of Radar.io. I know there would be geofencing, APIs, recently beacons, things like curbside pickup, the comparison of 1.0 to 2.0, and finally BOPIS, or buy online pickup in store. So if you could, up to you in which order, but just give us a basic understanding, the 101 of Radar.io.
Yeah. We talk about our vision as a location platform for every app, every device, every developer. So we're really trying to build the location layer of the internet, something that solves use cases for every app, every device. But just to sort of ground it in terms of what we focus on and what we do today, at the end of the day, we're really focused on helping people build great app experiences with location. Those can take a number of forms. We talk about a couple different types of use cases. Contextual app experiences, so changing the app experience, showing content or showing messaging based on where you are. And then also, arrival and visit detection, understanding when somebody is arriving at a place or visiting a place. And if you think about this in the context of a retailer, for example, what does their on-premise app experience look like? When you arrive at the store and you open the app, are you seeing loyalty and scan and pay features, or are you seeing features to browse and buy new items? The app should respect the user's location. Maybe you're getting welcome to the store when you enter, and your phone buzzes in your pocket, or maybe you're getting asked how your experience was, and you're asked to fill out a survey on the way out. And then obviously, if you're placing an order for pickup or delivery, location tracking, either you coming to the store or the delivery person coming to you, those are all important. So contextual app experiences, and then arrival and visit detection. And I think broadly in terms of the value that we provide our customers, obviously this stuff is really challenging to build, and we make it easy, right? Turnkey tool, couple lines of code to install our SDK. And you can kind of solve this stuff and deliver a great experience, and spend time focusing on the parts of your app or the parts of your experience that are unique to you, instead of reinventing the wheel. But I think broadly we think about helping folks increase engagement, driving more app usage, and improving operations. We have a bunch of different developer tools and capabilities that sort of serve as building blocks to realize this stuff. You can set up custom geofences around a store, or even parts of the parking lot or the drive-through. If you want to do really precise indoor use cases and you're able to deploy Bluetooth beacons, you can register those beacons inside of Radar. We have out-of-the-box place data and region data that you can tap into, APIs that you can call. And so, really what we do is help people build great product experiences with location, improve operations, increase engagement, try to be very prescriptive and specific about the types of use cases, and then offer very developer-friendly, privacy-first building blocks to solve that.
And you mentioned drive-through. Is drive-through equivalent to curbside pickup? Am I getting that right?
Different restaurants tend to do different things, right? I would sort of group all of this under potentially order ahead, right? You might be placing an order to pick up chicken fingers at a restaurant, and maybe you're pulling into a parking space and somebody's bringing it out to you. That's curbside. Maybe you're pulling through the drive-through to receive it. Maybe you're even walking into the store, right? And as COVID wanes, I think we're going to start to see some of these habits that formed around curbside pickup kind of persist, post-COVID, but also potentially the mix shift. But I think broadly all of it can be grouped under order ahead, and just sort of how does the app experience change when you're on premise.
I mean, I completely agree with you. Like right now, it's under the sort of veil of safety, of course, the fact that my chicken fingers will be given to me to my window of my car without me entering the location. But without the risk, I think we still want our chicken fingers given to us inside the car, not us leaving the car to enter the place, if that's possible. So right there with you. And the difference between curbside pickup 1.0 and 2.0, why is there really a 2.0? Is it purely location based, or are there other factors at play that differentiate between 1.0 and 2.0?
Yeah, you mentioned safety. I think folks want to get in and get out. People are busy, they have stuff to do. And so The ideal experience is you pull into a parking lot, your order is brought out to you, nice and fresh. The kind of suboptimal experience is you have to wait 20 minutes for it, or you have to go into the store and get it and wait for it. So it's about safety, it's about convenience, reducing wait times. And I think customer expectations have shifted, particularly in the last year when digital is exploding. Some of the leaders in the space are investing in great experiences here, and the bar has been raised. I think in general, whether you're a brick and mortar restaurant or retailer, or whether you're a digital first company, we're kind of at this fun inflection point where the world is opening up again. I think we're a quarter or two away from the world reopening, and folks are going to come back online. They're going to be spending. In the U.S., they're going to have a stimulus check burning a hole in their pocket, and I think there's going to be an explosion of new use cases and an opportunity to deliver great experiences with location, engage folks with location, and the smartest brands are going to capitalize on this opportunity.
Okay, so to start transitioning into the industry prism, the overarching value of Radar.io or any other company, but let's of course speak about Radar.io. It's saving time for engineers because, like you mentioned, it's the location layer of the internet. I really like that, and of course, it's also increasing sales and conversion rates. But at the same time, another thing that I see that I would love to hear you talk about a little more is comparing two scenarios. Right now, if I say call up the pizza joint and I tell them large pepperoni, double cheese, be there in 30, they will probably not do anything towards that time. They'll just start making a pizza. If it happens faster, it's just going to be a little colder. If it happens later, I'm going to have to wait a moment. Whilst if we change the scenario to we can see exactly where you are, and if you are late, perhaps you will start doing somebody else's pizza. That's a fantastic impact on like the back end of the business, right? So time management of employees, like that person is not going to pack your groceries if they see you're stuck in traffic, and they're going to actually do something else instead of standing outside the store with the bag looking where are you, calling you, and all of that. So I think it has a very profound impact on the operational logistical supply chain side that isn't visible to the customer who's just enjoying got my chicken fingers when I wanted them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you mentioned pizza. I think one of the foremost innovators in the QSR space is Dominos, and they launched this pizza tracker experience in their app, which is very fun. And, you can see where your pizza is coming to you. They actually recently added location to that, not with Radar, although hopefully they'll be a Radar customer someday. But it's a cool experience. They're sort of at the forefront. They've embraced digital. Customers love the app, and their business is exploding. Their digital sales are exploding. How do we enable other customers, other brands, whether they're QSRs or retailers, to deliver similar kind of tracker type experiences, both for delivery but also for curbside? And then, yeah, you're right. Improving in-store operations. We find that a lot of our customers, obviously, they invest a ton in operations, in store and otherwise today, but even kind of, opportunities to help them establish a baseline for some of these things. Like, what is your average wait time? Are there certain locations that have a higher wait time than others? If you're, deploying technology to solve these problems, can you understand the impact to your business in terms of decreased wait time or increased, on-premise app engagement? And, we're thinking about ways as a company to provide guidance on best practices with all this stuff. And then also from a product perspective, just help folks measure it and, drive continued impact.
Okay. And just wrapping up with Domino's, because I know I myself love me a meat or a double pepperoni from them.
Absolutely.
I think that what enabled them also to be sort of ready for this, because it wasn't just like, let's slap a location layer and bam. I think that when you have, just like you mentioned, companies sometimes don't know their average average wait times, which is like pure gold when it comes to data, because you can work around that. Whilst with Domino's, given this 30-minute commitment to delivery of that pizza, I think the entire sort of reverse engineering of the process had to happen, and it had to make sense with the exact understanding of what you just mentioned that some venues don't get. So I think for them it was a natural progression, not really an evolution, given the readiness way back before.
Yeah, and they obviously they're thought leaders, right? They're thought leaders from a marketing perspective, from a product perspective. They've invested in digital transformation over the years. They have in-house engineering team. Not everybody has that, right? And so we see an opportunity to be the trusted partner to a lot of these brands to understand what's possible, to sort of navigate the deployment of a solution like this, to integrate location in the right way. Everything from how location services is implemented to how you request location permissions to all of these things. And so I think there's an opportunity with the right tools and the right playbooks for everybody to innovate like the thought leaders in their space, and that's something that we're trying to support here at Radar.
And I just wanted to share this remark because I am an avid listener of Kara Swisher's Recode Decode or Prof G's Pivot. And I know they had an interview with Dara, the CEO of Uber. And actually, he made a very valid remark that people often skip. Because when you think of food delivery, oftentimes you would try to deliver the market between, I don't know, the Uber Eats, Deliveroo's, Volts, all of the many companies worldwide that do that. But actually, you have to look at the splitting the market share with giants like Dominos. Like they themselves hold a very sizable chunk, and it's not only going to be the sort of neo delivery companies. Sometimes it's going to be the ones who have been with us for ages that just managed to adapt. So speaking of adaptation, that's what I want to ask you about. How would you assess the market's readiness to follow Radar.io's teachings? Would you give me your take on industries that you've seen marvelously adapt to this, and also speak of the ones that, for unknown reasons to me, I'm hoping you'll shed some light on this, like pharmacies. The reason why Amazon decided to step in, because what I led with in the beginning, we have a tradition of standing in queues at pharmacies, and the staff isn't usually rushed. And it's not up to me to decide whether it's on the staff or whether it's on the process, but the fact remains, it's an industry in which implementation of things like Radar.io would simply probably get everybody's life better. The staff, the customer, the business itself. So what's your take? Why are people fast on this, and why are some sleeping on this?
It's a great question. I think certain segments see this as a core competency, right? And they're building location in the V1 of their app, right? Uber, for example, you mentioned Uber. Uber wouldn't exist without location, right? Like that had to be, in their V1. Obviously, navigation apps, same thing. Local discovery apps like Yelp, same thing, right? So location services was in their V1. But I think certain segments are historically have underinvested here. There are some exceptions like Dominos because they're thought leaders, they have the resources to innovate, but that have underinvested. And I think it's a technology thing. It's tough to build location-based experiences, and we can sort of unpack it. But location's challenging. Everything from privacy to accuracy to battery efficiency. It's a lot to deal with. And also just sort of education in terms of what's possible. So I think the company that fills those two gaps is going to help these segments that have historically maybe underinvested in location catch up. And I think your question was, is the market ready? We've been growing pretty fast. We see ourselves as the leader in the geofencing space, and a particularly bright future ahead of us this year. I think with segments that maybe hit the pause button last year, things like travel or events, due to COVID, kind of picking their head up and saying, "Man, all of our users are about to start moving around the world again. How do we engage them at the right time and place?" So I think folks are ready for it. I think it's challenging, and I think you need the technology partner, you need the thought leadership partner to help you build this stuff efficiently, build it in the right way, and kind of understand what's possible. And that's the opportunity that we're trying to unlock.
So just like you said, it's not even just a matter of the industries that hit the pause button. It's the industries that's going to be rapidly and violently smashing the resume button, trying to catch up, especially that all of us have become even more so capricious over the last year, seeing how tech has accelerated overall. We are not down anymore with a website that takes any longer to load than 2-3 seconds tops if I'm being extra patient, right? So something that you said really caught my curiosity, that it's not easy to develop skills of locations, or not skills, features of location? And I'm really curious because you mentioned those three factors, if I'm not wrong. You mentioned location accuracy, you mentioned privacy, and you mentioned battery. So excuse my technological ignorance, of course, in this question. However, are there varying use cases, for example, of battery usage due to how the location is programmed itself, how it's engineered? Because accuracy, I can imagine a mix between the phone's location, the antenna location, the Wi-Fi, the beacons that you have. But when it comes to privacy, of course, it's constraints that you either place or you don't, sometimes purposefully to get a bigger gain of data usage. But with the battery, is there really a difference that a developer can create a location service that's going to be a major battery drain, and then there's going to be one which is going to be super light on my location? Like, is that possible just due to coding itself?
Yeah. We talk about this sort of iron triangle of accuracy, efficiency, and frequency, which is sort of related to privacy, which we'll talk about in a second. And the reality is, if you turn up the accuracy, you request more accurate locations from the device, it's going to drain the device's battery faster, right? If you request low accuracy, Apple's just going to use your cell signal on the iOS device to give you a location fix. If you request medium accuracy, it's going to use Wi-Fi scanning, and it's going to look at sort of ambient, Wi-Fi signals with known positions around you and triangulate your location. If you request high accuracy, it's going to turn on the GPS receiver and it's going to go get a GPS signal. And if you turn on best accuracy, it's also going to turn on the accelerometer and all these other things, right? And so, if you go into your favorite retail app and you search on the store locator a bunch of times, that's going to use a lot less battery from location services than if you're running Google Maps navigation for an hour, right? That'll kill your battery. And different use cases kind of require different accuracy, right? If you want really precise, delivery tracking, for example, you might request highest possible accuracy. If you just want to snap to a user's current country, you can request really low accuracy locations and be just fine. And so choosing those trade-offs can be challenging, and there are trade-offs. Obviously, the more location data that you collect, the more location data that you persist, what you do to that data, right? Like, it's one thing to have a latitude and longitude. It's another thing to attach a user ID to it, or say, we think this user is at this place, be it a restaurant or something more sensitive, right? And so all these things are considerations. And, part of what we offer as a platform is, couple lines of code, some presets. So you can choose kind of data minimization settings, or battery settings or accuracy settings that make the most sense for your use case, and try to eliminate the guesswork. This was sort of born out of my experience at Handy, where we went off to build this, and it was challenging, right? It was hard to get this to work reliably and accurately and in a battery efficient way. And we just try to abstract all of that away as a platform.
So I love you as a guest speaker because you're just handing these transitions and segues to me. So thank you.
I'm doing my best.
So you mentioned that it's always a trade-off in this triangle. Geometry at least says so. You cannot make a triangle with more degrees than it's supposed to have. So what I thought about is, how about we could, for example, make sure that the data is collected and amassed in such a step that, of course, anonymized, but there are specific points, for example, that I'm near this hotel, but thousands of users have been near this hotel. So there's one specific location point that can sort of, just like the BTSs of a phone line, right? They triangulate where you are. So would that triangulation be possible, also reducing the need to use where am I right now, in comparison to, given all of those data points that were collected, I am most likely going to be within those 3, 4, 5, 20 points that have been saved as just like Uber does. Sometimes when you're in a specific location, it's going to suggest that users usually go here to do that. So my next question, essentially building off that, is the importance of location versus the data privacy equilibrium. Could we do what I just proposed without like any trade-offs towards privacy?
You certainly could. I mean, I think there are always trade-offs, right? Even if you have latitude and longitudes that have no PII attached, no user IDs attached, you could still potentially figure out, where somebody lives, or where somebody's spending time, right? And so anytime you're collecting lat longs and clustering them or learning from them or whatever, even if there's no user IDs attached, you could certainly figure those types of things out. One of the choices that we made pretty early on in Radar's lifecycle was, we're never going to share lat longs, even if they're anonymized, across customers, right? So if two different retailers use Radar's platform, they own their data. We're going to keep it siloed just to them, and we're only going to deal with first-party data. And it's sort of up to the customer to say, hey, I'm a retailer. I don't necessarily need to know when somebody is, at school or at the airport. I just need to know when they're at my stores. So I'm only going to set up geofences for those things. I only need to store location data for 30 days. So I want to set a super short, data retention period. I don't need to store, a user's name or email address with this data. I just want to store their user ID. So we try to offer, as a platform, tools to construct whatever view of the world makes sense for you. If you're a retailer, it's probably just geofences at stores and malls. If you're a travel app, it might be airports or hotels. And always keep that slice of the data siloed to an individual customer. You could theoretically do all sorts of crazy things, but privacy is top priority for us, and we don't do any sort of sharing of location data across devices or across customers today, very deliberately.
Okay. Satisfies my quench for the answer to that question. And we've seen Apple doubling down on all the privacy features. Like, we've even seen Google slack around for 5 months to update their apps to not fall into all of those things that require the user to consciously say, I want this. And it's not even a yes or no anymore. Like with photos, it's allow access to all photos, select photos, no photos. With location, it's all the time when using the app, one time. Do you see that as a risk? Do you see that as a risk to not the validity? Because of course there are applications, just like you said, that the location is necessary. But do you think that some of the solutions that were developed in mind with, it's opt out, not opt in, and now changing it to opt in, do you think that many of the businesses' assumptions and so on could simply face oops, our users don't allow the location, or they allowed it once, and whilst they can use it in the app, the entire premise of the fact that we will have access to the user's location when they're not having the app on their screen, what do they do then?
These are very good changes. The bar has certainly been raised, but I think that's a good thing. It's a good thing for end users because they have more transparency and control. It is, I'm not saying it's necessarily easy to deal with, but in the long term, I think it's a good thing for our customers as well. And I think you run into challenges with location and data privacy when there's a gap between, what the user has consented to actually, and what they think they've consented to, right? And I think a lot of the adjustments that Apple and Google have made to permissions prompts or App Store approval processes have basically been with an eye towards closing that gap, right? Let's make it so hard to request location permissions in the background that there's no way that a user could possibly not know what they're signing up for, right? And I think the reason why they did that is because there were a lot of folks that were collecting location data without users' knowledge, right? And without getting proper consent. I think in 2016, 2017, when we started Radar, a lot of the companies in the location space were ad tech companies and data monetization companies. They were like intentionally trying to gobble up as much location data as they could and repackage it and sell it. And Apple and Google have basically said, hey, that's not cool. We're going to raise the bar. And ultimately, this is a good thing for end users. It's a good thing for the ecosystem. It's a good thing for our customers. It can be challenging to sort of keep up with all the changes and navigate them and make sure you're updating your permissions prompts and make sure you're getting consent in the right way. It's challenging, but I think it's important. It's ultimately a positive change, and that's something that we think we can help our customers do with best practices and playbooks and product capabilities for data minimization and data retention and all of these things.
I saw at the moment you started responding that actually the insistence of holding the industry to a higher standard versus the sort of wild west of location data gathering, just like you said. In the short term, perhaps the wild west could have more benefits, just purely financial benefits. But in the long term, if you want to have people feeling comfortable and safe with location, I think sort of like the limiting the sandbox, just like Apple is doing, and hopefully others will follow. That's the way to go.
Yeah, I think there is a future where every app, every device is location aware, but in the right way. And I think we needed to go through this these growing pains as an ecosystem to sort of get to a point where, yeah, this is possible for everybody. But the bar is so high and the platforms are so advanced that it's kind of impossible to do it in the wrong way. So I look at this as a necessary phase shift that the ecosystem had to go through.
A little bit like cars, where people were at the beginning too scared to drive too fast, fearing that something would move around in their body due to the momentum of movement. So similarly here, we just need to tame people and location. And once again, thank you, sir, for yet another transition. You just said future, and that's exactly what I want to ask you about. So in like the nearby future, let's say 2021, 2022, what are going to be like location-based UX new things that I will see? And if that is too short a time frame, feel free to expand it. But also there's a secondary question to that. Imagine you are in whichever year possible. No technological, no financial constraints. Here's your magic wand. Mm-hmm. What is the dream-like feature that resides on the pillar of location?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I'll talk about the first one.
Yeah.
Which is, what do we expect to see over the next couple of years? I think in brick and mortar, retailers and restaurants, I think the value around, order ahead, arrival detection, on-premise app experiences, smarter messaging is going to become undeniable. And I think you're seeing thought leaders in the retail and QSR space invest there today. I think that gap is going to be closed such that every brick and mortar company that's investing in digital is going to have these experiences nailed. I think the other thing that you're going to see is, you're going to see the world come back online. People are going to start traveling again. They're going to start going to theme parks again. They're going to start going to theaters again. They're going to start going to malls again. Here in New York, they just opened up vaccines to 30 plus. Next week, they're going to open it up to 16 plus. And anybody who wants one can get one. And it's going to be a crazy year or two. And people are going to be moving around a lot and spending a lot. And I think you're going to see the smartest digital first companies and brick and mortar companies too, take advantage and use location as a way to reach their customers or their potential customers at the right place and the right time, and take advantage. So that's what I think the next 2 years looks like. I think in the long term, we talk about radar as being the location layer of the internet. We talk about building a location platform for every app, every device, every developer. I think you could imagine in the slightly further future that any device that you're using is location aware, both at the operating system level, but also at the app level, right? So, imagine if you were moving around the world and the right apps would sort of pop to the top of your home screen based on where you were, right? If you were on your way to the airport, maybe your United or Delta app pops up. When you're on the way to the hotel, maybe the Marriott app pops up. You're getting helpful reminders that aren't too noisy, from these apps to sort of help you engage with the app, or even maybe download a new app at the right time. And then once you open the app, you're immediately seeing features and content that is relevant to your current location or to your current context. It might be your location, like where are you? It might even be the weather. It might even be other things as well. So just sort of contextual awareness in general. So every device at the OS level and the app level, you're seeing stuff that's relevant. And I think it's going to take, continued investment by Apple and Google and some of the device and platform players. I think it's going to take location platforms like Radar to offer the tooling and the thought leadership here to help the market get there. But I think that's the bright future over the next 5 or 10 years as the space continues to develop.
Okay. I invite you to argue with me here a little because I'm a Apple fan. I've got my iPhone, I've got my watch, and the things that you mentioned, such as Siri telling me that the meeting that I have in 30 minutes will require such and such a drive based on my location, what you mentioned about airports and, for example, tickets and beacons, that's something that's been for years in terms of my travel, at least. So I would actually pose the following statement that I wouldn't want an app to open up on itself, because that would give me vibes slightly like the time when Apple imposed the U2 album on everybody, because it would be like we're thinking for you.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And on the other hand, I also recognize what Apple did with app clips. So NFC based, like I'm at the airport and I don't want the app to pop up for me. I want like me to take the decision, but I also want me to not like to do it purposefully. It's not something that will happen for me. The ease is there because I just tap my phone on a specific space that says tap here. But otherwise, just what I'm saying is I was hoping for an answer that would give me more of a futuristic vibe with location, because those things are already there.
Yeah, well, I think you raised a couple interesting points. There are certainly some capabilities along these lines today. Your point about opt-in is a really good one, right? You as an end user, you want control, right? You want convenience, but you also want control. And so, yeah, maybe the app is not going to automatically pop into view, but maybe it's easy to access if you need to. Certainly, if you've expressed intent by opening an app, you should see stuff that's relevant to your current context, right? And so I think giving users choice and letting them opt into the notifications, the apps that they want, but also making it convenient and smart is going to be key. And so I think striking the right balance is going to be important. And I think companies have started to invest. I think you're seeing some smarter features on Android and in iOS. But I think those will continue to develop. I think once you get inside the app, that will continue to develop. And we're not going to be using smartphones forever, right? We've got the wearables. At some point, I might have bionic eyes where there's a sort of heads-up display over top of what I'm seeing, augmented reality, and all of that needs to be tied to location and context as well. So we'll see where it goes.
So I have 2 remarks, 2 questions, and then we got to jump to our audience who's also hungry for some answers. There's a couple more questions you're going to like. So first thing that came to mind when you were talking about this is, of course, right now, British Airways is going to send me a beacon notification to my wallet so I can utilize the pass to get through security. But then, of course, we're looking for the next big thing. And I think what will beautifully align with location is the growing adaptation of voice. I think that the more voice will be implemented, just like we see in like the new Mercedes or the BMW, the Hey Mercedes, like imitating Hey Google, or I got to be careful because okay, Google will ask me in a second, what do I want?
I did that on a customer call yesterday. I said, okay, Google, and then my Android device woke up on my desk.
Yeah, she's talking, but she's at a low volume. So when you have the Hey Mercedes, I'm cold, and they don't respond to they respond to the fact that, okay, if you're cold, then it means that I have to bring up the temperature. And the more we will have the use cases of voice and it not being sort of blocked, because even with Siri, it took a lot of time for them to change it in something that doesn't overtake your entire screen, whatever you're doing. Or so it becomes smart enough that it talks with other apps than the native ones. So I think once we jump that milestone with voice, then location will simply be like the person you're talking to, you want them to know that you just came home and your IoT will lift up the garage, start making you coffee, and turn on some nice ambient Philips Hue lights, right? That's what I'm thinking. And also I have two remaining questions. You still got your magic wand, right? So my question is, if you were to use that magic wand to make sure that every 12-year-old in the world is taught a specific skill, a specific mindset, what would that be? We heard things like emotional intelligence, coding, financial prudence, understanding the climate change. Of course, feel free to repeat any of those, but I'd love to hear your justification why that is your answer.
That's a great question. I would maybe say, I think my sort of naive answer might be learn to code, right? I was lucky enough to sort of learn to code at an early age. I think maybe design thinking. Entropy in the world is increasing. Like things are getting messier and more challenging. And I think a lot of what we need to do to, whether it's digital experiences that are more convenient or service experiences when you go into a store, or even just sort of how we organize our thoughts, organize our daily lives, whatever, it's bringing order to the chaos, right? And I think design thinking to say, I'm going to take something that's really messy and complicated and just make it really simple and navigable, and sort of easy to use, easy to reason about, whatever, is really important. And to me, that's what design thinking is. And I think it takes the form of, I think about this, every day, every week at Radar. What does our SDK look like so it's simple for developers to use? What does our dashboard look like so it's easy for developers to get started? But I think design thinking even applies to our sales deck. It applies to how we talk to customers and take location, which is complicated and messy, and make it feel simple to them. So I would say maybe design thinking, and even sort of more generally, like how to impose order on the chaos, because I think the world is more chaotic than ever. We're just getting bombarded with all sorts of signals and problems and challenges, and everything changes every year. And the transformation, the pace of innovation is accelerating. So off the cuff answer, maybe design thinking, the ability to simplify and bring order to the chaos.
Imposing order on chaos. I love it.
Yeah, so this is what I try to do as CEO as well, is bring order to the chaos.
Personally, that's a whole nother episode, but recently I've been totally in love with the concept of generative design. Like that just blows my mind, the fact that we're gonna have just items looking like they're made by aliens from space just because the multiple models say so. But my last question is, as the CEO of Radar.io, as you just mentioned, what is your decision-making process? And it doesn't have to be anything specific. Let's think more along the lines of a rule of thumb. Like, what are the principles? What's your decision-making framework when it comes to things at Radar.io?
Sure. I think we think about kind of short-term and long-term. Long-term, we have this vision that we articulate, and we need to make sure that we're, methodically working towards that. It might take us 5 or 10 years to get there. But as we're making choices in the short term, we need to make sure that we're doing it in the context of this long-term vision. Location layer of the internet, location platform for every app, every device, every developer. In the short term, it's sort of a sequencing game, right? We know we want to build $1 billion business. We know we want to be, supporting great location-based experiences in every app, on every device. But you got to sort of rewind it all the way back to present times and say, what are we going to do in April of 2021, right? And that requires saying no to some things. It requires sequencing some things. It requires kind of setting clear goals and being deliberate. And so I think in the short term, we're really focused on being the undeniable leader in the geofencing space this year. We have some pretty ambitious growth goals that we want to hit. And in the short term, we basically ask ourselves, like, what are the highest leverage things that we can be doing to achieve those goals? And where's their wasted energy? Can we sort of unemotionally look at what's working really well or not working well, and just channel all of our energy there? It's never going to be perfect, particularly in a year where global pandemic, unprecedented economic dislocation, all of these things. But just, being deliberate about short-term goals and working on the highest leverage things and eliminating any wasted energy, while also not compromising your long-term vision, and making sure you're always getting one step closer to that is how we think about it.
Thank you so much. These were all of my questions. Now on to the audience's ones, and we have 10 minutes left, so let's be mindful of the time. Here is a question I really dig because it's aligned with what we spoke about a moment ago. In your opinion, what technologies will be amplified even more by location? And actually, I would add to this question, vice versa. One example that comes to mind is AR and AR glasses, where location would be supplemented with visual cues. And I would build on top of that question, what will be the, perhaps not 5, but you tell me how many forces of interactive features between, for example, visual cues of augmented reality, location, and voice. I think the question is something surrounding that. What will be the compounding synergies of those?
Yeah, I really love that question. We have this graph internally that kind of shows, new technologies over time, and then what is the potential to build, contextually aware experiences, on those platforms with those technologies. And if you go back to when I was a kid, we had a desktop computer. The monitor weighed like 20 pounds, and location sort of mattered, but the location of my device was always fixed, right? And it also didn't have a GPS chip in it, right? Then you have laptops, they're more portable, you can move them around. Okay, my device is moving around, that's interesting. Then you have smartphones, now you have wearables. And in the future, I think, you look at things like voice, Siri might be in your car or on your wrist, or in the future, even just implanted in your head. You look at augmented reality, like augmented reality is all about where you are, right? And whether it's glasses or a bionic eye or whatever, like you're literally looking at a thing, you're looking at a location in a certain context, and there needs to be a layer of contextual awareness there. There are things that, are actually sort of designed to take you out of the physical world, like virtual reality, right? And so the whole idea with virtual reality is like, doesn't matter where you are, you're just sort of transported to this different place. But I think we look at wearables and we look at IoT and we look at voice and we look at augmented reality and we say, those are portable things. You take them with you. You take them with you in sort of increasingly less, intrusive ways. And, there needs to be a location layer, a context layer that powers contextual experiences and all of that. And some of it might be at the kind of operating system level or the device level. Some of it might be at the application level. And, we want to be the platform to help you solve this primarily at the application level.
Just a couple weeks ago, we spoke on this show with Fardad from Kareem, who spoke with us about super apps, and we actually touched upon that topic. At what point will because let's say, okay, in Android, you have some level of integration between what an app can do to the system. In Apple, it's very closely guarded, and the user is shielded from making any system-wide interactions from the app and allowing that to have too much hands-on. So the concern there was, of course, we're doing super apps, so one app to rule them all. But at what point does the OS owner, Android or iOS, decide that actually all of those things will be built into the OS, and then the apps sort of like we spoke about the just like I gave you the magic wand to speak about the future of location. Fardad took the magic wand towards the future of super apps, and is the absolute peak of a super app the moment where it's no longer needed because it's so integrated into the system that there's no app, it's just the OS?
I think there's always, I don't want to say there's always, because who knows where we'll be 1,000 years from now, but there are going to be apps. And even if you're sort of offloading some of the heavy lifting to the OS, or you're going to be taking advantage of new and sophisticated OS capabilities, you're going to be building apps, and some of those capabilities might be challenging to use or challenging to use across operating systems. And the right developer platform can help you with that. You mentioned app clips earlier. I think historically Apple's been a little bit more guarded about how apps can run, when they can run. And you certainly, before app clips, couldn't have, launched a slice of an app in response to scanning a QR code, right? Now you can. That being said, like using location with app clips, kind of challenging. How do I use app clips? There are opportunities for platform players to abstract away cross-platform differences, make this stuff easy to use. So, the operating systems are always going to be advancing. They might be doing more of the heavy lifting. They might be exposing new APIs, new building blocks. But regardless of what those are, and they might look very different 10, 20 years in the future, there's an opportunity, I think, for developer tools, SaaS platforms, whatever, to basically help those apps, use them as effectively as possible.
being mindful of the 5 minutes that we have left, Zofia over here asks, next step of location seems to be within buildings. Are beacons the way? Is there anything like a next big thing in that space? And of course, what I want to touch upon, since I'm pretty sure that with your Apple Watch, there's an iPhone to match it. So there's the U1 chip, right? And there's the upcoming, we've waited for so long, Apple AirTags. So that's going to be restricted solely to iPhones, but I know for a fact that if I even try to share something right now, I take my phone, the U1 chip is already there and it shows me with those beautiful dots that it sees where I'm pointing something. So beacons, they're platform agnostic. Apple AirTags are not. So what is the next big thing that will be closely, I think what Zofia meant, unifying those? So not being just for the lucky ones who have an iPhone.
Yeah, beacons are very interesting. Beacons had this real sort of hype moment like 5 years ago, and it turns out that it's pretty challenging to deploy hardware all around stores, right? But a lot of folks did it, and a lot of folks actually have Bluetooth devices that might be an iPad or an iPhone or even a Wi-Fi router in store that they kind of don't have great tooling to activate. And we found that a lot of our customers that were using Radar for geofencing said, hey, like we have beacons in stores, or we have this device that could broadcast as a beacon. Can you all help us recognize those and build these like hyper accurate location-based experiences indoors? Is every single retailer going to have beacons installed? I don't know. They can be challenging to deploy, and geofencing oftentimes gets you 80% of the way there. But I think there's definitely an opportunity to use beacons more for indoor location use cases. I do think we're going to see new technologies emerge. I don't actually know a ton about AirTags, in full transparency, but you look at beacons, they can broadcast in a bunch of different protocols, right? Apple introduced iBeacon, Google introduced Eddystone. iBeacon sort of became the lowest common denominator format. There may be sort of new technologies and new standards that are going to emerge, and we'll see how it develops. I also think that location services is kind of, we talked about the trade-offs between accuracy and battery efficiency. They're kind of converging towards near perfect accuracy and near perfect battery efficiency. We always say that the blue dot that the Android team shows on the map at Google I/O gets a little bit more accurate every year, right? And even absent, Bluetooth or AirTags or whatever, there's so many devices deployed and broadcasting, and GPS technology is getting better and better, and all the sensors on the phone are getting better, that you might not even need beacons in the future. But I think they're a useful, interesting tool today.
And it dawned on me the clarity of what you mentioned before, that the overarching importance of privacy and respecting that privacy, because I also just remember another thing that Apple was working on. I think it was a patent that I read. They want phones to be able to communicate between each other. So Find My iPhone has been recently amplified by the fact that even if the phone is not connected to a network, iPhones, if both have it turned on, and hopefully all of them around it, can help you still locate the phone even if there is no connection. But when I wanted to say that, like I said, it dawned on me what you said, the importance of that nobody else than Apple can do it because of their commitment to privacy. They're not worried about the system and phones interacting with each other. If this was happening on an Android, I don't think I would be cool with that. So definitely see, even with more clarity, what you mentioned. A technical question from Pavel. Is there any interest on creating an SDK for Kotlin multi-platform?
Yeah, our Android SDK is written in Kotlin. Kotlin multi-platform I'm less familiar with. In general, I mentioned this vision of location platform for every app, every device, every developer. Like that does mean an SDK for every platform at some point. And in addition to our native iOS and Android SDKs, we have React Native. We just launched a Flutter Sdk, which is a really cool technology out of Google. This language called Dart to build multi-platform apps. So less familiar with Kotlin multi-platform, but I can take that one back to the team. And in general, interested in supporting location-based use cases on every platform, and also kind of abstracting away the differences between different platforms. So whatever the easiest way is to support that, that's something that we're thinking about.
So yeah, Pavel, if you're looking for a direct answer, follow up with Nick after he follows up with his team. And now on to the last question. Tomasz asks, and I think these were two questions that are identical. He'd be curious to hear, is there any use case of geofencing that you had in mind starting the company, but it has not yet been implemented for whatever reason? Perhaps the privacy-oriented thinking wasn't so developed back then. Maybe there's a technological constraint that's managed to arise in the meantime. Is there such a thing?
That's a really great question. I mean, I feel like I had so many possible use cases floating around in my head. It's hard to pick just one. I think I probably think of examples in every industry. I was recently just out to eat, and I put my name on a waiting list, and the host had to call me to sort of figure out where I was. And I just wish that all of the restaurant ordering systems that or restaurant reservation systems that I use had a layer of location awareness, so they could just know that I was 3 minutes away and sort of page me accordingly. So I don't know, maybe not the best answer to wrap it up, but I think about the apps that I use every day and kind of see the gap between what they're doing and what they could be doing, and always sort of thinking about what Radar can do to help fill that gap.
Tomasz, I hope that was a good enough answer for you. It surely was for me. And we are hitting the 1 hour and 1 minute mark, which means it is the time for us to wrap up. So, Nick, thank you so much for being such a graceful guest today. Really, really enjoyed our conversation, and it was an eye-opener in several spots. So thank you again for being such a wonderful guest speaker.
It was a fun conversation. Thanks so much for having me.
I tried. So everybody, see you next week at yet another episode of Disruption Talks, and make sure you don't miss it, because on the 13th of April, we've got a big one, and that's Disruption Forum FinTech. So with guest speakers from companies like Visa, Societe Generale, you just can't miss it. It's free knowledge from industry experts. So hopefully see you there as well. You will be able to find the link to sign up to that in the comments to this video. So Nick, once again, thanks a lot, and see you around.
Thanks, team. Bye.
Bye-bye.